So this is the outline of the presentation. I begin by introducing the research agenda. I have contextualized my research study on my childhood and some of the critical incidents that I went during my formative phase of the career and school education. So I bring with some of the anecdotes, and I try to connect these with different themes, right? Then I briefly discuss about the themes on teacher professional identity and how English language teachers construct their identity. What are the factors that influence identity construction of English language teachers? And when we talk about identity, let's not get confused. Identity is about how you understand yourself, how you present yourself, and how others see you, how others perceive you. That's identity. And there are other many definitions, many approaches and perspectives on English language teachers professional identity. And I will be discussing on different theories and approaches in the exploration of English language teacher professional identity. Though my research, my presentation is based on the context of language teaching, but the concept of identity is very general. The root of teacher professional identity is in social science, so everybody do have relevance of this topic. So don't worry, even though you are not from English department, or though you are not doing English, this topic is equally relevant to everybody, right? And identity provides a very good lens to look at teacher professional development. So whether you mathematics teacher educator or mathematics teacher or science teacher, or you are working in development sector, how you construct your identity and how your identity influences in your workplace, or so how people perceive you is always important, right? Then I will briefly talk about the methodology that I have used, and that's narrative inquiry. Why narrative inquiry? What is narrative inquiry? How I have used narrative inquiry in this research? That would be another agenda. Then I briefly present different themes that I developed out of the analysis of the data that I collected by using narrative method of data generation. I have done thematic analysis of data received from my participants and developed three major themes on beliefs, emotions, and identities. Imagine identities and investing, and sociocultural environment and agency. Particularly here, I'll be discussing on how English language teachers construct their identity with interaction with their learning environment, how their emotions are influenced by environment and other factors, and how beliefs and emotion influence their identity construction or their professional development, and how the imagination and imagine identity and investing on the imagined identity influence identity of teachers or the professional development of teachers. And next, the interaction between sociocultural environment, different levels of environment, from micro, meso to macro, and the personal initiative taken by the teachers amidst the influence of these three different contextual factors, and how in the interaction between these two, these teachers construct their identity. What would be the role of agency, teachers' effort, right? And finally, I conclude my presentation with a framework of the trajectory of identity negotiation of English language teachers. And also, I briefly discuss the implication of this research and my reflection on my, research journey. So let's begin with the background of this study. I have contextualized this research on my childhood, as I mentioned before. I was born and raised in Kaligandaki rural municipality in Sangja district, particularly ward number 5, Beltari. And this small village with the residents of 100, probably 100 households, which is situated on the bank of Kaligandaki river. And during my childhood, there was a Kaligandaki hydroelectricity project, a mega project under construction. As it was a mega project, and Nepali engineers, consultants, and these heavy equipment mechanics were not prepared to complete such mega projects. There were employees from different part of the world, and English was used as a lingua franca to communicate among the employees from different nationality. as English was used as a lingua franca over there, then those people, those residents in that particular village who were working, who had good communication skills in English, had better job opportunity. They used to get handsome salary, higher salary than those who were not able to speak in English. And that had really impressed me a lot. I had impressed that by learning English in higher, studies, or by choosing English as a major subject, I would be able to have better economic capital and also symbolic and cultural capital. And that influenced me to choose English in higher studies. Apart from this, during my lower secondary, there was a teacher called named Ramsa. Ramsa was recently back from India, who had worked in one Anglo-Indian family where English was used as a medium of communication. Because of that, Ramsar had very good exposure during his work in India, and because of that exposure in English, a learning environment, his communication skill was so good, and I was really impressed from his speaking, particularly fluency and his near native speaker tone, accent, right? And while coming to the class, he used to bring big Oxford dictionary, blue color Oxford dictionary, and I used to imagine as if Ramsar knows all the words in the dictionary, and I was really influenced and impressed by him. I had idealized him as my role model, and I wanted to be like Ramsar. And that's how I have imagined about my future. I wanted to join the communities of English language teachers, and I had to invest to acquire skills, attitude, knowledge to join that particular community. So that influenced me to learn English. Apart from that, the critical incidents that I underwent during my teenage, that range from motorbike accident to my father's untimely demise to many other incidents, and also the critical incident that I underwent during my formative phase of my career, that really influenced me to become who I am today. Though initially I wanted to be English teacher, in the secondary level, I ended up being teacher educator in a university of repute where I am working now, right? So because of the investment on my imagined identity, I have been able to become what I have become, and I'm in front of you. And this story, my story influenced me a lot, and that inspired me to explore on the idea of teacher professional identity and the concept of teacher. Who are teachers? What constructs them? What is their trajectory? What is their journey of their professional development and identity construction? Then I started exploring on this ancient wisdom tradition from East and West. Particularly from East, I started exploring on Vedas, Upanishads, and Gita and Confucian philosophy. And from West, Plato's Socrates, and from Gramsci to Foucault and many other literature to explore teacher teacher identity. Even though these ancient philosophies and literature do not have the concept of teacher identity, but they have talked about the notion of guru and teachers. I found the genesis of guru in Vedic and Upanishadic wisdom tradition from East. Guru is considered as a teacher of the Vedas, an immediate incarnate exemplar in life, as noted by Melko 1982. In Sanskrit, Gu means ignorance and Ru means dispeller. So Guru means dispeller of the ignorance. And when I looked into the books written by Plato, where he spreads the knowledge of Socrates, he has presented teachers as the one who explores the truth through knowledge. Teachers co-investigate with students, as noted by Beck 1985. Particularly in Allegory of the Cave, Plato presents teachers as the one who lead learners from ignorance to truth. In Allegory of the Cave, I hope most of you have read Allegory of the Cave, and there is one person who comes out of the cave. He comes out and he sees the light. That means light is symbol of knowledge. He gets knowledge. Then he goes back to the cave, and he inspires other people to come out of the cave, because there they were considering the shadow as the reality. But when he came out the cave, he realized how the truth is, how the knowledge is. So there, the one who came out is the teacher, and he inspired other to come out of the cave. So teacher's responsibility is to show the path of knowledge, right? Their responsibility is to lead the learners from ignorance to truth, as argued by Plato. And apart from these, even Gramsci has talked about the teachers in the prison notes. Gramsci was imprisoned for his radical opinion, and from his jail he used to write, letters to the niece, and in those letters written to the niece, he has talked about traditional and organic intellectuals. And Gramsci considers teachers as traditional intellectuals, but he also notes that these teachers can also be organic intellectuals if teachers raise representative voices of a social group and a political party. So in all these, philosophies, in all these, wisdom traditions, we found one commonality, that teachers engage students in dialogic process. Teachers co-investigate in dialogue with students. So teachers' responsibility is not just to spread the knowledge, just to pass the knowledge that they have, rather to engage students in dialogic process and to construct knowledge. So in this discussion forum as well, we are not trying to transfer knowledge here. I'm not going to transfer the knowledge that I accumulated. Rather, I'm sharing my ideas. I'm sharing the findings of the research, and later on we'll engage in dialogic process, and that's how we try to understand and learn from each other, right? So then after learning these ancient philosophies and literature, I also came to recent literature on teacher identity and identity, concept of identity in general. And I found that Norton has forwarded one very, you know, good definition of teacher identity. Norton defines identity as how a person understands his or her relationship to the world, how the relationship is constructed across time and space, and how the person understands possibilities for the future. So, identity, as noted by Guy, is being recognized as a certain kind of person. So, how people understand you, that's identity. So, its identity is connected not to internal states, but to performance in society. How you perform in society, how you are perceived by others because of your performance, that constructs your identity. That constructs perception about you. When I'm presenting now here in front of you all, you are making perception about myself by listening to me, by looking at my portfolios, through my conversations and through my works, right? So that constructs who I am. So it's not only about how you present yourself, rather it's about how other people recognize you. And as noted by Baba and Hall, so this Baba and Hall are from this post-structuralist tradition. They deconstruct the essentialist notion of identity, and they present identity as a process of becoming. So identity is not an essence, but a positioning. So identity is a very fluid concept. There is no concrete notion of identity. You keep on changing, and your identity gets evolved, right? So identity construction is cognitive, social, emotional, ideological, and historical. They are both inside the teacher and outside in the social, material, and technological world. So how you present yourself in social media, how you present yourself through different technological tools, right? Your knowledge, your relationship, your emotional experiences, and how you respond to these different emotional experiences, all these influence the identity construction of the people. And then after exploring the literature on identity, I came down to the English language teacher identity concept, and I explored some of the researchers work, and I came across Noonan 2017, where he presents the idea, where he discussed about the idea of teacher identity and its importance. As at present context, there are more, learners of English, speakers of English from non-native background. The issue of language teacher identity is particularly salient for the teachers who is not of a native or the second or foreign language being taught. Because so the identity affects their efficacy and the professional development. So English language exploration of English language teacher identity is very pertinent because teacher identity shapes commitment to their teaching. So in this study, I have explored the lived experiences of English language teachers by exploring their life history through the narrative inquiry for the holistic understanding of teachers. So by life history approach, I mean that, so I have explored whole history of English language teachers, whole life story of English language teachers, and I have tried to develop the trajectory of their identity construction. And during the process, I not only explored some literature, this thematic discussion on teacher professional identity, rather I explored on some of the recent research studies conducted on teacher professional identity. And I found that most of the studies are focused on how agency influence identity construction, how different, sociocultural and contextual factors influence language teacher identity, particularly in Western context. So for instance, Martin 2017 has explored on the influence of administrative support, motivating environment, and student performance and the exercise of personal agency on the identity construction of English language teachers. Whereas Hersey has explored on the sociocultural and contextual factors influencing language teacher identity. And Hafsa 2019, who is from Bangladesh, has explored online teachers' identity development through the teacher education program. So mainly the focus is on the influence of teacher education program, the practicum, right? And different training programs that influence identity construction in most of the literature written in Western context. And in Nepali context, the focus is on the transformative journey with critical observation on pedagogy, curriculum, and training programs offered. And on the and whereas Dungana, the Gautam explored on the transformative journey and how the construction of identity was influenced by curriculum and training programs. Whereas Dungana 2022 focused on the self-initiated dimension of professional development with a focus on socio-cognitive conjectures, whereas Pokhrel 2022 primarily highlighted the reflective practices and its role in the identity transformation of female teachers. So from these studies on or the exploration on these empirical studies on English language teacher professional identity, I came to realize that there is paucity of research, there is scarcity of research on English language teachers identity construction. And then in the context of Nepal, the less priority of teacher education and professional development is given, which is also evident in the minimum budget allocated to education sector. That range from 11 to 13% in last 5 years data, as noted by Neupan and Joshi 2022. And even in that budget, most of the amount goes to paying the salary of the teachers, not on teachers' professional development. So in at this pretext, the purpose of the study is to explore the lived experience of secondary level English language teachers at public schools in Nepal to develop the trajectory of identity negotiation. Trajectory means to see, to explore the journey of identity construction. And in the exploration of their journey, these themes emerged as pertinent, as prominent: beliefs, emotions, and imagined identities, sociocultural environment, and agency. How these factors influence the trajectory of the identity construction of English language teachers. That's the focus of this research. So this question becomes pertinent. What is the trajectory of identity negotiation of secondary level English language teachers from community schools in Nepal? And this general question leads to the following specific questions. How do beliefs and emotions shape the identity of secondary level English language teachers? How does imagined identity contribute to the identity development of English language teachers? And how do sociocultural environment and agency influence the identity negotiation of English language teachers? And after the formulation of these questions, I started exploring thematic and area in depth, and I came across different definitions of teacher identity and different approaches of exploration of teacher identity, particularly in the context of English language teaching. I found that there has been a shift from developmental psychology to sociocultural and post-structural approach in looking at the concept of teacher identity. And this post-structuralist theories define identity as multiple, changing, contested, and relentlessly negotiated in unequitable power relations. I mean, this power influences identity construction. An identity construction process is a very fluid and dynamic. It's constantly changing, right? So the concept of identity is not stable, or that means the kind of person I am today may not remain similar tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or after 10 years. I constantly, change myself, and my identity gets evolved. So it's a very, fluid process. So exploring the identity, the ontology of this identity is not possible, right? Because it's not stable. So what we can explore is the process of construction, the journey English language teachers take while construction of their identity. So my focus is on the exploration of their trajectory, their journey of identity construction. Because identity is not something that already exists. Instead, it is emergent and the result of the production of negotiation, as noted by Hall 2000. So my focus is not on being, rather focus is on becoming, the gradual process of construction of identity. And after the exploration of literature, empirical studies on English language teachers' identity construction, I came across these different themes, which is presented in this screen. Sociocultural environment, agency, and identity. This is one prominent theme, or these are also the factors that influence the identity. Apart from these, there are also other themes like beliefs, emotions, and identities, imagined communities and imagined identities, macro factors like gender, race, and ideology, communities of practice and identity, teacher education, learns. These are some of the factors that influence identity construction, and these emerged as themes after the analysis of empirical studies on teacher professional identity. And for the exploration of teacher professional identity, these theories of Wenger's notions of communities of practice and Norton's concept of investment become pertinent. After the rigorous analysis of the literature and the theories used in teacher professional identity, I came to realize that these two theories become pertinent to this study. Wenger defines these communities of practice as a group of people who share a concern, a set of problems, or a passion about a topic, and who deepen their knowledge and expertise in this area by interacting on an ongoing basis. So teachers construct and negotiate their identity through participation and reification, through their engagement as three modes of belonging: imagination, alignment, and engagement. When teachers engage in communities of practice, they construct, they imagine themselves to be certain kind of person, and they start investing in engagement in different communities of practice. And during the engagement, they align to certain people, and they associate with certain group of people, and they dissociate with others. And in this process of association or dissociation, they construct their identity. So with whom you align yourself matters a lot, right? And apart from that, so another theory, the concept of investment is also important. And Norton defines investment as commitment to the goals, practices, and identities that constitute the learner's learning process and that are continually negotiated in different social relationships and structures of power. And this concept of investment is very important at this juncture for this research, because You may imagine, you may work in certain environment, you may study in certain environment, you may have your imagined identity. But if you do not invest on that imagined identity, you cannot construct your identity. So investing is really important. And this concept of investment complements the concept of this imagination. So these two theories are complementary to each other. That's why I have taken these two theories. There is rationale behind selection of these theories, right? And this Norton's concept of investment borrows ideas primarily from Bourdieu's concept of habitus, field, and cultural capital. So I have also drawn this concept of habitus, field, and cultural capital in my research. So investment in this study has become a means to examine how language learning expanded both symbolic and material resources. So when you start investing in language learning, you start expanding your symbolic and material resources, and how English language learners were able to access and participate in context usually dominated by native English speakers. You know, when you learn skills, you will be able to participate in the communities of practice. When you develop these resources, okay, these symbolic and material resources provide you access to engage in that community. But here, so Norton primarily focuses on attaining these different resources to participate in the context which is dominated by native English speakers. But this concept may not necessarily apply in my research, because so my research is focused on this second language context or foreign language context. Even though at present we don't talk about this English as a second or English as a foreign language in the era of world Englishes, but still, so our concern is not to, getting engaged with the native English speakers or native English speaking context, right? But primarily Norton talks about the investment relating with how we teachers engage in, learning with native English speakers, or how they get access to native English speakers. But I have critiqued that concept in this research. So while conducting this research, I worked remaining under the multi-paradigmatic framework of the research. And in multi-paradigmatic framework, interpretive and critical paradigm become pertinent. As during this, research process, participants and myself got opportunity to reflect, self-reflect, and critique faulty assumptions and values. And also this research concerned with whose interests were being served by the existing values, assumptions, social relations, policies, and practices. Critical paradigm becomes pertinent. And as I, engaged with participants while constructing stories, and I interpreted the already interpreted stories of the participants, these interpretive paradigms become relevant. And regarding the methodology, narrative inquiry became relevant to this study as it provided opportunity to bring educational experience as lived, as noted by Connelly and Clooney in 1990. As stories enable us to present our experiences, including our identities, this, as noted by Barkus in 2016, narrative inquiry became important. And even within the narrative inquiry, there are different types of narrative inquiry, from life history approach to arts-based narrative inquiry, autobiographical and biographical narrative research. But in this study, I have used life history approach of narrative inquiry to explore the lived experiences of 4 secondary level English language teachers. And I have generated their stories through in-depth interviews and informal conversations. I actively participated in the story generation process, acknowledging the mutual co-constructed nature of the stories. And for the interpretation and the meaning making of those stories, I draw the concept of narrative knowledging as forwarded by Barkus in 2011, where Barkusin presents the narrative knowledging as a story process that includes from story generation to transcribing, translating, coding the data, and presenting the themes in the narrative report. But specifically to code, categorize, and thematize the transcript, I have used Saldana's first cycle and second cycle coding process. Particularly, I used descriptive, in vivo, affective, and value coding. And as I used narrative inquiry as my research method, I tried to maintain the common places of narrative inquiry, temporary, sociality, and place by paying careful attention to these three common places. During the story generation, I was mindful of getting enough details about time, place, people involved in different events, incidents, and situations. I was probing. I was questioning my participants. Oh, what happened, and when that happened, how that happened, right? Those questions were asked frequently. Could you please also share the examples? So I was trying to get enough details of any incidents that participants shared, or any vignettes participants shared during the conversations and interviews. Apart from these, I also was mindful about the different quality standards like transferability, transparency, verisimilitude, pedagogical thoughtfulness, and reflexivity. I was, reflecting on my personal, stories when I was interviewing with my participants. I also reflected on the incidents that I underwent during my teaching career. Not only that, so I have made the difficulties or the hurdles that I underwent during this journey, and how I overcome all those hurdles in the reflection section of this research. So I was trying to be as open, as transparent, as reflexive as possible, as to maintain the quality of the research. And during the whole process, I was mindful of the usefulness of this research to teaching learning. I was very mindful of how this can influence or how this can impact the pedagogical practices or the learning outcome of the students. So I was concerning with the pedagogical thoughtfulness, the quality standard. I was trying to maintain this. And regarding the ethical issues, ethical considerations, I took informed consent with my participants. I took written as well as verbal consent, and verbal consents were recorded during the interview process. Participants were well informed about the voluntary participations and the fact that they could quit in this research journey anytime they feel uncomfortable, or their time didn't allow them to participate in this research journey. And I also tried my best to you know maintain the privacy, confidentiality, anonymity. Pseudonyms are given to the participants, and any details that could reveal the identity of the participants are carefully handled. They are taken care of, and their identity are not revealed in the research report. And after the analysis, so during the process of interview, I recorded, transcribed, translated, coded, categorized, and I developed different themes, right? And after the analysis of all these stories of the four participants, three major themes emerged. The first theme is beliefs, emotions, and identities. I mean, how these beliefs and emotions influence identity construction of English language teachers. So after the interaction and the analysis of those interactions or the transcripts, I came to realize that this teaching learning environment has influenced the belief of these teachers, and belief has influenced the behaviors and their pedagogical, professional choices and the pedagogical approaches of English language teachers. One of my participants, Kumari, shared that when she received one opportunity to take part in child-centered level 1 training during her formative phase of the career, and when she happened to see some of the teachers who were very influent, who had good English with accent which is near to native speakers, she developed conviction that improving English is also about improving speaking. So the environments that she got, the training opportunity that she got, has influenced her belief, and that belief has influenced her in investing on her identity, right? And even Nita has shared how environment influences belief. Nita's initial beliefs were that public school teachers were not serious enough in improving the students' performance when she was teaching in a private school in Kathmandu Valley. But when she was selected as secondary level English language teacher in one of the public schools in Kathmandu through TSC examination, after working for a while in that public school, her perception changed. The changed environment, changed context, influenced her belief. Later on, she realized that, and that these teachers in public school are also equally serious, but their performance or the result is not, they are not getting expected result because of different factors that influence the teaching learning process. She noted, if students do not perform well, we blame teachers. Even the public blame teachers for not teaching well. That's outsiders' belief, a surface understanding. You know things better when you go into the field and understand them in detail. Because when outsiders see the public school teachers, they have different opinion because they do not know or they cannot have in-depth understanding about the situation in public school. That's why they blame. But when they get into the teaching, when they go to the field, they will know the difficulties, hurdles of teaching in public schools. So from these stories, we can infer that outer social world and inner self shape each other. I mean, the environment, the field where you are working or where you grew up influences your belief, and that belief influences your pedagogical choices, pedagogical approaches. Teachers' belief as structured and structuring structure influences their pedagogical approaches. Surya shared that he believed storytelling is a vital classroom strategy, and his beliefs were set by the environment where he was learning. And because of that kind of belief, he started, using storytelling as a strategy to motivate students. He noted, mostly I use storytelling to motivate students. When we tell stories, students get excited. I ask them about the lessons learned from the characters and setting. He started sharing the stories of Malala and, Bill Gates and different successful people that motivates students, that encourages students to learn, right? So he has started using storytelling as a important classroom teaching learning strategy. And Bines has also shared the influence of his belief on his teaching. When Bines was working in school, so there was one very good teacher who used this deductive method of teaching grammar, and he was highly influenced. And that environment has influenced his pedagogical approaches. He confessed while talking about grammar teaching, now we prefer the inductive method of teaching, but I still use the deductive method used by Mr. Surendra. I believe the easiest and most appropriate way of teaching is the deductive one. I don't know whether he was correct, whether this, deductive method is appropriate, but his story revealed that the environment where you work influences your pedagogical choices, or the belief that you develop influences the pedagogical choices. Not only that, belief also influences the professional choices and also behaviors. When I, talked about why Nita joined English language teaching, she shared. So, she had a kind of belief that mathematics is a complex subject. And she also believed that she could excel if she chose English in higher studies. So her initial belief about complexity of mathematics and that she could excel in English influenced her choice of subject in higher studies and later on her career as an English teacher. So belief has influenced the professional choices, right? And even belief, even Bines shared that. So he believed that teaching was a respectable profession. English teachers were rare, and there was a good scope of English. That was his initial belief. That's why he joined English language teaching profession. Even Surya echoes, similar kind of experience, similar kind of story regarding influence of belief on the professional choice. Regarding the belief influencing behavior, when I talked to my participant, one of the participants shared, not completing course is a sin. So in quote unquote, he said, "Pap laksani course na sagda," right? And because of that kind of belief, so his behaviors are influenced by that belief, or teachers' belief influence whether teachers are responsible or irresponsible, right? So, and then this kind of stories from Bines and Kumari reinforce the findings of Lee 2020, who discussed how belief in native, non-native speakerism influence the behaviors. Even though the research of Lee 2020 was not on the on the how environment influence belief, and how this belief influences these pedagogical choices and other activities, but even this how this belief on native non-native has influenced their confidence and their behaviors. So in that sense, so story of Binas reinforces the fact that this belief influences the behaviors. And even Kumari believed that the foundation of English should be made from the basic level, which motivated her to take the class in grade 3. Look, her belief has influenced her behavior of taking class in grade 3, though she was secondary level teacher. Because she believed that foundation should be made in the primary level, in the basic level. So she started going to basic level, even though she didn't have that kind of responsibility. She took her personal initiation, personal effort to improve the foundation of English these students. So this habitus, this belief as a structure and structuring structure has influenced the behaviors and the professional choices of English language teachers. But this belief can change when these teachers or the learners context, learning context and working context changes, because context or the field they are working in influences their behaviors. When I asked one question, how do you feel being a teacher at present? One of the participants, Binef, shared, if you search, you will find that most people don't want to be teachers because there is no security or career growth. I'm just an exception. Yes, he has a good career, right? That's what he said. Yeah, I have good career, but I'm just an exceptional teacher. But there are many teachers who do not have good career, right? And he also replied, so could you please share any wow moment in your career? That was my question. And in that question, Bines responded, sometimes I ponder upon my life and question myself, was it the right decision to join teaching? You were asking me if I had any wow moments. Forget about the wow moments. There is no satisfaction in life. And so from these, so what we can infer is this, changing context can change the belief of the teachers, right? So there is influence of belief, context on the belief of the teachers. So belief is not static, and the teachers' behavior are also not static. When belief changes, their behavior, their pedagogical choices also changes, right? So the next theme that I developed is relating to these emotions. Teachers undergo many positive and negative emotions during their teaching career. And when I was asking questions relating to this affective domain of English language teachers' professional journey, then one of my teachers shared that she considers her teaching career as a roller coaster ride in terms of the emotional experiences she underwent, right? Because there were so many happy moments, and she also experienced very sad and depressive moments during her teaching career. And when I looked into the stories, I found that the vulnerability has become a significant motif in the story of the teacher, particularly in the story of Venus. Let me explain the vulnerability. Is vulnerability is a situation where you find yourself in a very critical point, in a very difficult circumstances. Your beliefs are questioned. You find existential crisis, and that situation is the situation of vulnerability. And normally, this vulnerability is considered as negative emotion, but this vulnerability can also turn out as positive emotion. So when I was talking about this, emotional aspect, been shared. So during his, learning phase, he always used to get scared of job opportunities. He had fear that if he is not able to, get enough, skills and attitude required to join English language teaching, he would not be able to, become English language teacher, right? So he always felt vulnerable during his learning phase and even the formative phase of his career. He revealed, I always used to get scared of job opportunities in future. And that fear of opportunity always motivated me to work hard. This is how I completed my academic journey up to my master's in 2001. So, so this Bines had developed a kind of belief that by being English language teacher, he would have good economic and symbolic capital because he had seen Mr. Surendra earning a lot through tuition classes. And he had seen the wife of Mr. Surendra, who had very, uh, you know, very, uh, good life. He had idealized the life of Mr. Surendra as, very good and comfortable life. And he wanted to have good symbolic and economic capital as that of Mr. Surendra. But if he is not able to acquire the skills and knowledge, he would not be able to, acquire these, symbolic and material resources. That's why he always, felt vulnerable. And not only that, after the completion of master's degree, he went to village. He taught there for a while, and he came back to Kathmandu because of different, circumstances. He could not stay there, and he had visited one of the private schools in Kathmandu. And while visiting there, he saw the language proficiency of his students, and from that he realized that his language proficiency was below grade 2 students. Though he was master's degree holder, his proficiency was below grade 2 students of that particular private school. It was a shocking moment and he had a kind of survival threat because to teach in private school in Kathmandu, he should have good communication skills, right? So he felt so vulnerable during the formative phase of his career. And the stories of these Binas echoes the findings of Yuan and Lee relating to how these negative emotions a student teacher experienced during practicum in the People's Republic of China challenged his belief about the teacher, right? And so even Kumari shared similar kind of story. Kumari, during the start of the career, so she found that English was given high priority, but her English was not that much good. Because of that, she felt so, vulnerable during the formative phase. She confessed, at that time, I used to feel guilty because I did not have good communication skills. For almost 6 months, I wondered whether I would survive in English language teaching. Even I echo similar kind of experience. During the formative phase of my career, even I had to struggle a lot to develop my, language proficiency. So from these stories, we came to know that English teachers can be vulnerable when their initial, beliefs are questioned, or when they don't have enough, skills and knowledge, particularly language proficiency, language skills. They feel so vulnerable. That's typical to English language teachers, right? And so this concept of vulnerability, though this concept is quite different to Wenger's concept of vulnerability. Wenger, in the theory of communities of practice, presents the concept of vulnerability as something that these participants feel when the participants are not aligned with the norms, values, and ideologies of the communities of practice. When they are not aligned with these norms and values, they feel vulnerable, right? They undergo these vulnerable situations, and Wenger considers vulnerability as a negative with negative connotations, as a negative emotion. But in the context of these English language teachers, vulnerability has turned out to be a very positive, though negative emotion, it has very positive result. Because of this vulnerable situation or vulnerability, they have got motivation to invest in English language learning and acquiring the skills and knowledge required to become English language teacher, and that has contributed in construction of their identities. Apart from this emotional attachment with students, colleagues, and school, and compliment, appreciation, and satisfaction, these positively contribute to the self-esteem and sense of the construction of their identity, right? So one of my participants shared that. So when she was teaching in one of the private schools, she had developed an intimate relationship with students. And because of that, so when she was doing MEd, she had pressure from family members to quit the job because her job could hamper her learning. But because of good emotional attachment with the students and colleagues, she could not resign because the working environment there was very supportive and pleasing. She had developed good attachment with the students. The working environment was so enjoyable. She confessed the first workplace was like first love. That's what I feel. She expressed the emotional attachment with student and school. Because of that, that gave a kind of sense of self-esteem, and that helped to construct her identity, right? Not only this, the compliment, appreciation, and satisfaction, this also positively contribute to the identity construction of English language teachers. So Nita shared in one of the Parents Day function, she had contributed as MC of that particular program, and there were participants from this district administrative office, and there were colleagues and guardians, and she received appreciation from these people. One of the administrative officer from district education office shared that government schools can be changed drastically having teachers like her. And one of the students in front of everyone confessed, I want to personally give thanks to Anita madam for supporting, scolding, beating, and for everything, because of which we are able to complete SLC successfully. That was such a satisfying moment. I had goosebumps while listening to him. So these kind of moments, this happy, satisfied moment, motivated her to give her best, and that positively contributed her identity. Apart from this, student success and satisfaction also positively contributes. This student success gives sense of accomplishment and self-actualization of the potential of these teachers. That positively contributes to the professional development of these teachers. But not only these happy moments, teachers can also undergo sad and depressing moments. Nita shared when she had to face the disruptive behavior of a student. She and the very uncomfortable moments she had to undergo. She had to endure a very difficult emotional experience. She shared, to see him shouting at me, I literally cried. No other students had reacted that way previously. He said, why do you always scold us? Why don't you listen to us? And blah blah. That day I could not control myself in the class and cried. So she had simply told a student not to use mobile phone in the classroom, but that day all of a sudden a student uh, showed disruptive behavior, and that made Nita very sad and depressed. Even Surya shared a similar kind of very depressing moment when Surya had applied in the post of lower secondary level teacher, and so he was not selected over there, but later on he came to know that he was not selected on the basis of this political bias. He didn't belong to certain political party, and there was pressure from the community or the political parties to select another candidate, even though Surya was performing better. He confessed, I heard a selection committee member saying that though I had performed better, they could not select me due to political reasons. After listening to them, I felt very bad. I felt like nothing is fair in this country. That was one of the most painful moments in my life. So, as claimed by Swagger in 2019, these negative emotions somehow constrain participants' identity development. And next theme that I developed out of the analysis of the stories of participants is imagine identity and its influence in career choice. So these teachers joined English language learning and later on English language teaching because they thought that there would be better job prospect and earning after joining English language teaching and learning. Been shared, there was a good scope of English. As a worst case scenario, though you don't get a job, you could earn a lot by taking tuition classes. Anita noted, while choosing English as my major subject after SLC, I thought I was good in English and I could excel in this subject more than others. She thought that she would excel better in future. So their concern, their choice was basically concerned with their dreams for the future, as noted by Khan 2003. They wanted to have better life in future, and they thought that by doing English, they could be able to do so. And Kumari also shared that the worldwide market of English also determined my choice. English is a powerful language. As a language, English has dominated the world. Next, better possibilities of job opportunities for English graduates and also to be a global citizen. As the world is converted into a global village, I was motivated to be an English teacher. Even though her, belief and her choice of English subject in higher studies was influenced by the monolingual Western ideology that privileges the English over other languages, as noted by Darwin and Norton in 2018. The job prospect of English graduate in the context of Nepal cannot be denied. And even my stories of learning English, seeing the villagers having better income, who had better proficiency, better language skills, echoes the stories of all these participants. And not only that, their choices of subject, our career was influenced by the social, cultural, and economic capital of the teachers and also the environment where they worked, the training opportunity they received. So Kumari shared when she received one opportunity to get training during the formative phase of her career, the training titled Child Centered Level 1. She saw English teachers who had good communication skills, right? Who had good career. From that, she realized that English language teaching can also be a good career. She confessed, from that training, I realized that our teaching career is fun. I should engage in teaching. As I enjoyed teaching, I switched from humanities to English language education faculty with a bachelor's degree to develop my career in teaching. I did my B.Ed from Mahendra Ratna campus, Tahasal. If I had not received an opportunity for training at Kids Palace School, I would not learn much about teaching and not get motivated to the profession. So Kumari is switching to the education faculty from humanities, is basically motivated and with the expectation of acquiring a more comprehensive range of symbolic and material resources that is hitherto unattainable. She wanted to develop skills and knowledge and attitude that requires to become English language teacher. She thought that by doing education, she would get all these skills. So she switched from humanities to education. Even Surya shared, from childhood, I had a dream to be a role model. Being a secondary level English teacher, to fulfill that dream, I started teaching grade 9 and 10 students. Even my story, that I was influenced by Ramsar's communication skills, had idealized him as my role model, and I started investing in English language learning to materialize my identity. Imagine identity to become English language teacher echoes with the stories of these participants. So as noted by Ubdillah et al. 2020 and Barkhuj in 2016, these participant stories, showed that there is impact of imagination and imagine identity on the identity construction of English language teachers. First, teachers imagine themselves to be certain kind of person, and they start investing on that imagined identity to acquire symbolic and material resources or skills and attitudes required to join that particular communities of practice. And because of their sincere investment, they become what they want to become, right? So imagined identity and investing are interrelated concepts. So only motivation and imagination is not enough to convert the imagined identity into reality. Rather, a teacher needs to have high commitment to their desired goals, practices, and identities. So imagined identity and investing are complementary concepts. And the engagement of these teachers or their investment in different teacher education and practicum, teaching experiences, training opportunities, engagement in observation, reflection, and feedback should be considered as their investment on their imagined identity. And from teachers' experiences, we came to know that their engagement in teacher education and practicum has helped them a lot to acquire these resources, skills, and attitude and knowledge to join their professional community. And teachers' story revealed that these different programs have helped them to develop these knowledge. Neeta developed foundational knowledge of English language teaching through teacher education program and practicum. She confessed, I came to know multiple techniques of teaching during my bachelor's. During the practicum, I applied whatever I learned in class. Teachers used to observe our class and give feedback. It was learning by doing kind of experience. But practicum increased my confidence. Before that, I was not able to face maths. Look how the practicum and teacher education help her a lot to acquire skills that require to join the communities of practice of English language teachers. Even Bines noted, I still have preserved those lesson plans that I prepared during practice teaching. When I look back to those lesson plans and reference materials, audio, video, charts, figures, and many others, I feel that I really worked hard to develop good resources. Lal Prasad sir guides us so well in developing teaching resources for 45 days long induction program. Look, induction and the teaching program has helped them a lot. So they have developed different teaching resources as a reificative process in the words of Wenger 1998. And because of their sincere engagement in teacher education and practicum as investment in imagined identity, they are able to become the kind of person they wanted to become. Apart from this, teaching experience also helped a lot. So Kumari noted engagement in teaching, learning, and training programs. She developed different tools and artifacts. She developed language proficiency and pedagogical skills essential to engage in teaching, right? And then Bines also noted, when I returned from village to Kathmandu, I had better political and social sensibility. I developed pedagogical clarity. Due to this, I was confident enough. Look, so because of their engagement in teaching, learning practices, they developed these skills and knowledge required to become teachers. So they had opportunities to negotiate, this pedagogical content and different other skills. Even Neeta stressed during working time, every day was like new learning opportunity. I applied whatever I studied during my teaching to support my study. I consider teaching as a plus point. Look, when she was learning, she was also teaching. She was doing both, and that helped her a lot for the construction of her identity, right? She had an opportunity to negotiate her accent to pedagogical content knowledge and classroom management skills during the teaching career. Apart from these training opportunities, engagement in observation, reflection, and feedback also help them to construct their identity. So through engagement into different activities, they were able to harvest the return on their investment, and their return was the subject expert. So because of their sincere engagement in different activities, because of investment on their imagined identity, all these teachers have ended up being what they had initially imagined. Initially, they just wanted to be English teachers, right? But later on, they become subject experts, right? These teachers' engagement and investment in materializing their dreams for the future has led them beyond what they had initially imagined being. And even my stories echoes with the stories of the participants. Initially, I had idealized Ramsar as my role model. I was influenced from him. I wanted to be secondary level English language teacher. But after sincere engagement in, learning activities, engagement in professional development activities, and because of different opportunities, I ended up being teacher educator in a university of repute, and so I ended up being what initially I wanted to be, beyond my initial imagination. And same happened to other teachers as well. Nita now contributes as a curriculum evaluator and material developer, and she also contributes as a subject expert. She has contributed as subject expert in CDC, right? And she's still contributing. And Bines is a teacher trainer and curriculum developer. He contributes as a subject expert in different, forums, different spaces, professional spaces. And Kumari has started contributing as a TOT trainer of the, she provides training of the trainers. She contributes in different TOT programs. So this participant stories reaffirm the findings of Barkhuizen in 2016. Barkhuizen, in his research, he has explored the story of Sela, an immigrant in the island of Tonga in New Zealand. Initially, Sela wanted to become English language teacher of her community. She wanted to teach adults, immigrants in the Tonga island. She belongs to the, non-white community, and she wanted to teach the adults of the non-white community. But ultimately, after engagement and investment in teacher education, she ended up being a teacher in a white school, a different identity than she had initially imagined. Not only this, the socio-cultural environment and agency also influence the identity construction of teachers. Teachers are influenced from, micro, meso to macro cultural, environment, contextual environments. When I talked to my participants, one of my participants shared, so his parents had dreamed to educate him, and he started, honoring the dream of the parents, and he started investing on the dream of the parents. Look, so how family environment or the parents' dreams influence the learning of the students or the learners, teachers, right? So even Kumari noted she was raised in a very strict and typical Brahmin environment. Here, this Brahmin environment, so this Brahmin word has a lot to do with the ideology. The Brahmin cultural ideology has influenced the actions and motivations of Kumari's parents. And in Brahmin community, the education, knowledge is given very high priority. And even Kumari aligned with the directives of the parents, and that influenced the learning and the identity construction of Kumari, right? And even Venus' parents used to encourage him a lot. Even parent, particularly mother, was illiterate. Even she knew the importance of education, right? And then so he because of this good environment, he was encouraged to learn. So these participants' alignments with the directives and norms of the family influenced their learning and identities, as noted by Wenger 1998. So family environment, as micro environment, influence a lot in their identity construction. Not only this, economic condition and accessibility, or the financial capital of the family members, and that provided, so that influenced the accessibility of the quality of education, that also heavily influenced, right? So economic condition provided affordance to good learning environment. So economic condition has also great influence, apart from this learning environment at school and during teacher education also heavily influenced. Been shared during his schooling, there was massive student absenteeism and dropout rate. Classrooms were dark, learning was not given priority, and nobody inquired about the absenteeism of the students. That was the environment, and that negatively influenced the learning of the students, particularly Bines. Grammar translation and rote memorization was heavily used, right? But in case of Nita, so when she was learning in one of the private schools in Kathmandu, the school was declared as English speaking zone, but as she didn't have good language competence, language proficiency, she hardly used to understand the concepts, and she had made all the mistakes in the initial days of her learning. So these learning environment also heavily influences. So as noted by Norton and Toohey 2011, the sociocultural environment during participants' education influenced their pedagogical choices and classroom behaviors and also their learning. Even my stories echoes with the stories of all these participants. And during learning environment during teacher education also heavily influences teachers, right? So, but even though the learning environment was not that much good, but these teachers, these participants, engage in self and peer learning. Because of that, they were able to, you know, develop the kind of identity that they wanted to develop. So these teachers, these participants also identified and disidentified with their teachers that heavily influenced them. For example, Surya was influenced by one of the teachers, particularly his teaching pedagogical approaches, Khelvidhi, right? And one of the teachers used to, apply Khelvidhi to encourage and motivate students. And Surya also later on aligned with the pedagogical choices of that particular teacher. And that influenced his teaching styles and behaviors as a teacher, right? Same applied with Kumari and Bines and even myself. Not only this, workplace environment and the changed context also influence the learning of English language teachers. When the context is changed, that pose a kind of crisis of identity. But when teachers align with the norms and values of this changed context, they are able to, construct and negotiate their identity and adjust in the changed context, and they survive in teaching, as noted by Neupan et al. 2022. Not only that, social environment also heavily influenced learning. Particularly here, I would like to social environment and the policy, that also influences learning process of teachers, particularly haphazard implementation of EMI, English as a medium of instruction, and the summative assessment heavily influenced the learning of these teachers. Not only this, national politics also do have heavy impact on teachers. When I was, having conversation with my participants, they came up with a lot of political incidents and its influence on their learning and later on their performance. Bines shared, during his schooling, teachers were active politicians. They used to teach in the daytime and do politics in the evening. But sometimes these teachers used to bring reference of injustice and discrimination and tried brainwashing students, as organic intellectuals do, as noted by Gramsci in 1975. But not only this outer political environment, outer, mass frustration and, upheaval in the society also somehow used to get reflected even in schools and universities. When Bines was doing masters in Kathmandu, in one of the, university campus in Kathmandu, the outer environment was reflected there. And students set fire in the department. He believed it was a very depressing moment and people had lost optimism towards life. And such incidents occurred even in educational institution. They set fire in the library. That was very, um, very, unexpected event that occurred. Even Surya noted, when he was doing schooling at that time, there was Maoist movement going on, right? And he wasn't able to go out, of the village. He revealed. So we were not in a condition to go out of the village for schooling because of the Maoist conflict. While studying in the village, we didn't have more options except doing either Nepali or English. Look how this politics has influenced the choice of subject, right? He had only two options, either do English or Nepali, and he chose English, right? So this political environment has also influenced his learning. If he had opportunity to come out of that village and, join good colleges, probably he would develop, knowledge, skill, and attitude required to become teacher, right? He probably could be better teacher, right? But these things, these politics do have heavy influence. And even Kumari noted. So when during her, college education, there used to be tussle and tear gas in the college. Therefore, we could not take classes regularly, and that adversely impacted the learning of Kumari. So, as noted by Gavionali, external social and contextual forces influence the teaching, learning, and identity construction of these teachers. But despite all these, positive as well as this mostly negative adverse impact of this different micro, meso, and macro context, macro environment, because of the personal initiation of these teachers and the resistance against the hegemonic ideologies and norms and these micro, meso, and macro factors from the side of teachers, they are able to become what they have become now. So teachers' agency has played pivotal role in transforming the teaching learning environment and identity construction. These teachers had zeal to move ahead. They used to do self-study, not relying only on the efforts made by the school. And their efforts not only influence them, but also influence the teaching learning environment and the learning outcome of the students. These teachers identified themselves as, TSC recruited teachers. They identified themselves and they gave the name TSC recruited teachers. Most of the teachers were saying the same, using the same word, TSC recruited teachers, because they aligned themselves with these teachers because they had a certain kind of, this zeal to bring transformation in teaching learning, right? And then their effort has brought, transformation in teaching learning environment and even the evaluation system and examination modalities. So from these, I came to the conclusion that there is two-way influence from different levels of environment, micro, meso, and macro, and also the teacher's agency. Teacher agency influences this micro, meso, and macro context, and these contexts also influence teachers. And these interaction between these two factors, teachers construct and negotiate their identities. And my research showed that these teachers do have influence on micro and meso factors, but least impact on macro factors is evident in this research. And out of the analysis of all these stories of participants and the rigorous study of these different thematic areas, I came to develop the trajectory of identity negotiation of English language teachers as a synthesis of their stories and different themes. And out of the synthesis, I developed this model of professional development that revealed that teachers particularly grow through their engagement in different socio-cultural environment, emotional experiences, and different cognitive engagement or learning engagement. And these three do have influence among each other. That's why I have put these dotted marks over here. You can see these dot lines over here. That means there is mutual influence among these environment and experience, emotional experiences. Environment influence experience, emotional experience, and emotion influences environment. Emotion influences cognition, and cognition influences emotion. Or cognition influences environment, and environment influences cognition. Right? So there is mutual influence of these three roots of professional development, right? And teachers go through the different stages of professional development, from student teachers to novice teachers, experienced teachers, and they go to the saturation phase. And these are the factors that influence their professional development and identity construction, that range from family environment to teachers to imagine identity beliefs, teacher education practicum, teachers influence, workplace environment, right? Training, student success and satisfaction, observation, reflection, their agency, all these factors influence. And I have, made these, fluctuating, growth of the teachers, because teacher development is not a linear process. There are ups and downs in teachers' career, teachers' professional development. Different contexts influence them. There are moments of vulnerability, sad and depressing moments. You can see vulnerability here, right? And then the sad and depressing moments. These to some extent, sometimes adversely impact. Sometimes even vulnerability can be very motivating factor, and that help teachers to grow, right? And then teachers' beliefs can also change, and this changing belief can also influence their identity construction. So these are the factors that influence the identity construction of English language teachers. As identity is not a static concept, as teacher cannot remain the same all the time, because yesterday's you and today's you are different. That's why this attempting to explore the identity of teachers would be a hopeless attempt. That's why I have explored the trajectory of identity negotiation of English language teachers. And this trajectory, the route that English teachers take, construct or influence their identity, construct who or influence in becoming who they have become, right? So my concern is not on exploring the being of the teacher, rather on the becoming of side of the teacher. The becoming means the constant process of development or evolve. This the evolving process of the teachers, and this research do have implication on teacher education, curriculum development, practicum, training, language policy, and research. I don't want to focus on all these because I have taken a lot of time during my presentation. It's already 7:18, right? So I just want to focus on this language policy and research. As there was haphazard use of English as a medium of instruction that had adverse impact on students' learning, right? Kumari has clearly expressed, even Bines has and Surya have shared the moments where, because of the use of EMI, cognitive development of students have hampered. And from these, we can infer and we can implicate that. So we need to move to code switching and translanguaging as English language teachers. That could be the options to help the cognitive development of English language teachers, students, if their proficiency level is not good, right? And then, so this research also do have the implication. Most of the studies on teacher identity are conducted through sociocultural perspective or psychological perspective. So this research opens up, implicates the avenues for exploration of identity through complexity theory perspective by exploring life histories of English language teachers. As most of the studies are focused on a short span of teachers' professional life, with particular focus on training or teacher education programs or the short-term programs, exploration of life history of English language teachers would uh, develop new avenues of identity construction and professional development of English language teachers, and that would have contribution to the discourse of English language teachers' professional identity and construct and professional development of English language teachers. Thank you so much, and these are the references. Thank you all.